Hello, welcome to the Joe Cortez Show here in Las Vegas, Nevada, the entertainment capital of the world. And the population is growing so fast. One of the things that we're very concerned about is healthcare. And of course, we have sports, all kinds of sports here. All individuals want to take care of themselves, making sure they can succeed in what they're doing. But being healthy is so important. So I brought on a doctor, Dr. Heera Prasad, and MD, and she's going to talk about how to protect yourself from keeping yourself healthy and not getting ill. I mean, so many individuals out there suffering from diabetes. Sometimes you don't even know you have it until you get yourself checked. So it's so important to have a doctor that can tell you about healthcare, and we have it today. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
So tell me, individuals out there now are suffering from diabetes, and one of the things that we say is that sometimes we don't even know we have it. What can you tell us about what to look for and how to treat diabetes, especially when it comes to obesity? And we can talk about different topics, exercise and whatnot. What can you tell us?
Diabetes has been increasing in prevalence in our population for several years, and it's actually on the rise even more now that our population is getting heavier. So obesity and diabetes go hand in hand. But things to look out for, classically in the textbook, they tell us people who have diabetes, it comes on all of a sudden, people start losing weight a lot, they get really thirsty, they're drinking a lot, and they just can't get enough, and that's when they make a diagnosis of diabetes. But the truth is that not all diabetes gets diagnosed the same way. And the reasons that I'm able to say that is because, one, it runs so rampant in our population. There is a genetic component to it, and there are things that we do in our lifestyle that sort of gradually add up to a worsening risk of having diabetes. So I would say, in the interest of prevention, it's best to go to your annual checkups, because part of what is guidelines for our annual checkups is to check your sugar and to check some of those markers for diabetes, especially after people reach a certain age or who have a certain BMI. So as far as things in the general population to know is, if you are a little heavier set, or if you do have a lot of family members who have diabetes, it's better in your early to late 30s or even approaching 40 to actually get screened.
So in other words, is this hereditary too?
There is a hereditary component to it. So that means if you know for sure that your birth parents or your siblings have diabetes or have a predisposition for diabetes, the chances are that you carry some thing inside of you that makes you at risk for having diabetes. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times that risk is compounded by the way that we treat ourselves, the food that we eat, the activity or physical activity that we do or we don't do.
And especially now with the pandemic, a lot of individuals, especially youngsters, are not as active as they were before because they're more homebound now and not playing sports, not running, not doing anything. The parents want them to go out too much, and you can cause a lot of the obesity, and that really can trigger some of the high rates numbers of being a diabetic. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And not only does obesity increase the risk of you having diabetes, obesity actually increases the risk for a lot of other diseases like high blood pressure and high cholesterol. Our bodies were born with the correct number of fat cells that we have for our entire lives. So the number of fat cells in your body now is what you were born with. They just get bigger and smaller as your body weight goes up and down. And that means when your fat cells get bigger, your body needs to create a blood supply to feed that bigger blood cell. And the data shows that each fat cell, the higher it gets in 1 pound you gain per body weight, takes about 7 billion miles of blood cells in order to feed it. So that means every time you gain 1 pound extra throughout your life, it compounds the stress on your heart that needs to be utilized to pump blood throughout your body. So not only is obesity a risk factor for diabetes, it is for high blood pressure and high cholesterol and all other things that affect our heart muscle as we get older.
So it's better to at least exercise a little bit every day. Now, sometimes some individuals are elders. The elders are having more difficult time as far as exercising. What do you recommend as far as exercising, whether you're young or you're old?
Actually, any movement is more than zero in our opinion as physicians. If you're not able to do anything because you have limitations, because you're a fall risk or your body hurts or something like that, if you're able to go short distances around the block or even just have like a pedal bike like that just is under your desk or something like that, any movement is better than zero movement, because as we get older, our body becomes a use it or lose it tool.
Some individuals just want to just go like this.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you're not able to do much and the risk of you falling down or the risk of you hurting yourself doing any movement, of course, those are individualized things that we have to be mindful of. But that's why in our field, diabetes, endocrinology, and metabolism is evolving into more of a preventative field, because we see how the consequences of diabetes, obesity, and hypertension affects people as they get older, and we want to be able to make sure the next generations and the generations that come after that don't have to suffer with that.
Now, do you recommend that they maybe get a bicycle at home, keep a bicycle at home, a stationary bike, that they can work with that? Just sit there, watch TV, and just or read a book.
And if
just
people
exercise.
don't have legs to support the use of a stationary bike, you can get small hand weights and do stuff without exerting too much effort or energy. Because as you get older, the muscles that you have are in use it or lose it mode. That means if you're not moving around and you're not expending energy, your muscles go to sleep. And muscles utilize energy very efficiently. Muscles utilize sugar very effectively. So if you're not moving around, your body kind of goes into sleep mode.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to avoid, because the minute that you get up and you have to do something and you're older and your muscles are kind of asleep, the easier it is for you to hurt yourself. And that's what we don't want. That's a lot of the things that we do in acute care medicine, is reversing things that we could have prevented.
That's why I like to get out my heavy bag and punch my heavy bag.
Yeah.
And keep it, keep myself going a couple of times a week.
Yep.
But it's just even just walking around the block, but being careful if you're prone to falling. So be careful, but just walk around an area that you're familiar with.
That's correct.
Walk on a regular basis, 2 or 3 times a week.
Yep.
And then at home, you can do some weights. Do some weights at home. While you're watching TV, you can just be doing the weights, right?
Yep, or get something like a pedal master or something that you
Pedal
can
master.
keep on the bottom of your couch while you're watching TV, and in the commercial breaks, just pedal out just a couple of minutes. But that is all of the bigger muscles in our body, arms and legs and calves, are what's important to preserve.
Okay, now, we talk about being that when you're young, you can have infants sometimes, are they born with diabetes? Are they prone to get it?
It's rare for infants to be born with diabetes. There are some genetic syndromes that predispose infants to have what we call neonatal diabetes, but what we know commonly as juvenile diabetes actually develops around puberty or in adolescence typically, and that comes from a genetic predisposition for autoimmune destruction of everyone's pancreas. And in that case, those people will need insulin for the rest of their lives because their body can't make it.
Wow.
That form of diabetes is different from what we commonly see in the population, which is type 2 diabetes.
Okay, but when you're talking about with the insulin one, normally that's when you're type 1 diabetic, right?
Well, type 2 diabetics need insulin too, but for different reasons. Type 1 diabetics don't have a functional pancreas that makes their own insulin. So they need insulin from the outside because science hasn't developed another medicine to supplement what your own body would produce.
See.
For type 2 diabetes, the pathophysiology is completely different. The reason why you get type 2 diabetes is very different for everyone. So that's why the medications are a lot more variable. We can use pills over shots a lot of times. And a lot of times people who have just a very mild form of type 2 diabetes, we can hopefully try and cross our fingers to manage with diet and exercise alone.
Some individuals are prone to they don't want to take the medication because they say, "Oh, I feel okay." What advice can you tell individuals when they give a prescription for medication why they should be taking them?
The primary reason why that's important is because at the time that someone is diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, the data shows that over 14 years previous to the diagnosis date, they've already developed complications related to diabetes. That means in the small, tiny blood vessels behind the eyes, the blood vessels of the heart, the kidneys, and the liver, and other places in our body. And so that means that your body has been seeing a high blood sugar or an intolerance to high blood sugar for almost 14 years before a person is actually formally diagnosed in the lab with diabetes. So that's why even if you don't feel bad, or even if you don't think that diabetes is causing your life a problem, we know from years and years of studying diabetes and what it does to your body that if we don't stop it in its tracks now, we're not going to be able to reverse some of those consequences that have already happened.
Okay, now when it comes to your eyes, they look at the back of the eyes to see your condition. You recommend they go see an ophthalmologist on a regular basis if you're diabetic?
Correct, once a year.
Once a year. Okay, and if they, what can happen to them with the eyes if they don't follow through?
So sugar, when it floats around in your bloodstream, is a really big and sticky molecule. When you see sugar in a bottle or sugar that we have at home, every time you put it out on a counter, it wants to stick to what it's close to, right? And so if you imagine sugar like a molecule kind of the same way that floats around in your bloodstream, it takes up a lot of space in the little blood vessels behind our eyes that are really, really small. They're less than a tenth of a millimeter wide. And when you have a big sugar molecule that's trying to go through your eye blood vessels, it gets very sticky and it gets a lot of friends that kind of stick to it. And that creates small little blood clots in all of the small little blood vessels in the back of the eye. And that over time can cause what we call diabetic retinopathy, which can lead to blindness sometimes. And that process happens so slowly and over such a long period of time that if we don't catch it early, it gets worse before we can repair it or reverse it.
So in other words, they can go blind from
Just having diabetes.
Yeah. That's why it's so important that, we talk about these topics because we take a lot of things for granted, and you viewers out there, you got to listen carefully to what Dr. Prasad is talking about, because it's something that will keep you alive and you want to stay as healthy as long as possible, especially in your later years when you become older and you take too many things for granted. You say you're too tired to do certain things, but it's so important. Now, we're talking about exercising. It's so important to exercise. How many times a week you recommend individuals exercise on a regular basis? Should they do it every day or every other day or what?
The guideline recommendation is 150 minutes of aerobic exercise 3 to 5 times per week in total. So that means you can divide 150 minutes by 3 or by 5 and break it up in however you feel like you can tolerate physical activity. For me, what I like to recommend women in particular, women between ages 35 and 75, is focus more on strength and muscle building, because we worry the most for women about falls and fractures, especially after they reach menopause. So I like to let women know it's important to strengthen the muscles of the legs and the core and the lower back so that they protect their lower back bones and their hip bones, because that's where we worry about the risk of fracture the most. We do also need cardio exercise, which is like the treadmill and the elliptical, or just walking around the block if that's all you can tolerate. But that is so that you can keep your heart muscle working, squeezing, nourishing the rest of your body with each and every one of its heartbeats. And the grand total by guideline recommendations is 150 minutes of aerobic exercise 3 to 5 times per week in total.
115 minutes?
150.
150.
So if you divide that by 3 or if you divide that by 5, however much you can tolerate in a week is what we recommend.
Okay. So dancing is pretty good too.
Dancing's a pretty good cardio. Yep.
Yeah. Good dancing.
Yeah.
See people out there that like to dance, whether it's hip hop or it's salsa. I like salsa, so I like to maybe get on the floor, on the dance floor, and do a little bit more dancing. So now tell us about now you've been studying medicine for a number of years, and now you kind of become an expert in your field, because this is what you love to do. You want to help people and get them on the right track. But some individuals are hard-headed, and they don't want to listen. They take things for granted because they're not feeling nothing. Most of the time, you don't feel anything when you're diabetic until something serious happens. What can be the worst thing that can happen to give you a wake-up call?
Well, when it comes to treatment of diabetes, primarily we're invested in protection from heart attacks and strokes, or what we call cardiovascular disease. Diabetes management is evolving to focus away from micromanaging the blood sugar numbers and actually towards the focus on preventative treatments, which means that we know the downstream consequences for diabetes are heart attacks and strokes and vascular disease. We want to prevent that, so that's why a lot of our diabetes treatment regimens are focused on, instead of lowering the blood sugar so much, what can we do to prevent heart attacks and strokes, whether that be from decreasing inflammation, decreasing cholesterol, decreasing blood pressure, or decreasing weight, because we know those are all factors in preventing. And when I tell people what I recommend as a treatment for diabetes, I want to make sure that I focus on individualizing that, because like you said, a lot of people are hard-headed, they don't feel bad, but when you kind of tailor each individual person's treatment regimen to what's important for them, I think it makes things a whole lot more palatable. If I told you that I'm interested in protecting your heart, because you can't function without your heart, then you would be worried because you wouldn't be able to work out as much, or you would want to make sure that your heart is strong enough for you to be able to tolerate as much exercise as you do. So I think that's why individualizing therapy targets is really important for practice in general in any type of medicine, because you have to be able to speak to people in a language that they understand and focus on the things that's important to them, so that both of you together as a team can come up with a plan at the end of the day that you're both happy with.
Do you recommend that perhaps they have a personal trainer, maybe, if you if you live in a community where they have a local gym you can go to and have a trainer work with you? Is a little bit better sometimes?
I think that's a really good idea. I just know locally and in gyms in general, personal training can be cost prohibitive. It is one of the pricier ways to exercise. But I do think that it's important for people who don't have a background in exercise to start with a personal trainer, so that they know what their form looks like and how they're moving their muscles. Are they prone to hurting themselves? Because back injuries are very difficult to recover from, for example. So I think to start with, in order to come up with a structured exercise plan for oneself, personal training is not a bad idea if you can afford it. Otherwise, make a friend who's a coach somewhere to make sure that your form is correct when you start exercising or you pick up a new program, because the worst thing would be is if you picked up something brand new for the first time because you were very excited, as if you got hurt on the first day.
Yeah, no, I think that is that's so important. But I think that individuals, when they get a certain age, there's individuals out there who are also doing drugs and smoking and drinking. I mean, those are three bad habits to have. And if you're diabetic, that makes it even worse, right?
Yeah, we call those modifiable risk factors, because we can ask you to stop, and you can stop if you are able to stop. So like you said, drugs, alcohol, and smoking actually are things that compound your risk for heart attacks and strokes if you are already a diabetic. And so that's part of our routine visits, and we try to counsel people as much as we can that those things, if they don't stop, that because it's of your own accord, it's your own will to be able to stop that. Those things are not things that I can do for you that will compound your risk if you.
How can somebody whose hardhead doesn't want to do it, how can you convince them that they have to do this, either live or die?
Yeah, I think that is a relationship building over serial conversations with people. I think you have to be able to buy people's interest in their own health. And it is counterintuitive sometimes. You have to talk to people over and over again and take the small wins that you can get. And I think a large part of the population is very hard-headed, but I think they need somebody reasonable who is also interested in their life and their well-being in order to speak to them and make an individualized treatment plan. And if you're not making a lot of progress right away, then both of you should understand not to get discouraged, because if you make a small little bit of progress over a long time, then it's more than zero.
Yeah. Now, talking about the habits, good habit of eating healthy, talking about carbs and fats and whatnot. What can you tell us about that? Should they be talking to a nutritionist or get a book and read about nutrition?
I think getting a nutritionist or even speaking to a nutritionist once in someone's life going through medicine is beneficial, because then at least we know what is a carb, what is a fat, what is a protein. When a lot of people come to our office and they're newly diagnosed with diabetes, you'd be surprised that a lot of times they don't know what carbs are. And we are so built around a culture where food is so important to us. And so we eat socially, we eat for fun, we eat with our families, and we eat to feel good. And what we eat makes such a big difference over time, especially if you are a diabetic and you are taking insulin and those kinds of things. We need to be mindful of what is a carb, because that is what the insulin is going to work on the fastest.
Can you explain to our viewers what is a carb?
Loosely, you can think of carbs as most of the foods in our daily grocery stores that are white. So bread, rice, pasta, potatoes. Those are staples in a standard American diet, and they are pure carbs. Proteins are lean meats, beans, tofu, and soy, which are really prevalent in over-the-counter and grocery stores now. And then vegetables, of course, which help with fiber and processing everything that we've already eaten.
Now, with the carbs, you talked about the pasta, the bread. What substitutes are there for them if they get something like different brown bread, different kind of rye bread, whatnot?
Yeah, so brown breads, brown rices are still carbs, but they burn a little slower. The ask for the population is not to cut out carbs completely. We all do need carbs in order to survive, but we need carbs in moderation. I think the standard American diet has carbs skewed to a majority on our plates when we go out to eat, for example, or even when we cook at home. A lot of times the majority of the food that's on our plate is a carb, and that's what has to kind of take second fiddle with preference towards proteins, fats, and vegetables on our plates. So the ask is not to stop eating carbs completely, it's just to eat a little bit less of them.
Sure. Now, how about when it comes to desserts, which we all love?
Yeah, so they are, again, allowed in moderation. This is not to ask anybody to stop eating the things that they like, and that's what I like to make sure to tell people when they come into my office and have a diagnosis of diabetes, is to not stop your life. Diabetes is a difficult disease, and it is a full-time job for a lot of people, but we don't want that new diagnosis to be a detriment or a discouragement from doing the things that you normally like to do in daily life. So dessert is allowed in moderation.
Right.
I think medicine is a very medicine is not black and white, it's gray, and so you're allowed to do things that are quote unquote you're not allowed to do because you have a disease, but you're allowed to do them once in a while on special occasions.
But just because you're taking a medication doesn't mean that you can go ahead and cheat eating what you're not supposed to be eating.
Correct, and that's where self-control and free will and all of that comes in. That is sort of, it's not medicine, it is your behavior, your lifestyle, and the support system that you have around you. But that's where all of that becomes very important, in addition to medicine, in addition to the things that you do in your
So
lifestyle.
in other words, discipline is very important.
Discipline's important for everything.
For everything. And that means if you have your spouse or your significant other could tell you, we want you to keep you around a little bit longer.
Yes.
You got to listen to me a little bit. You can't take it personal, but you got to take it like as good advice. Somebody's trying to help you to get on the right track.
Yeah, that's why I like it when people come to my office with people who love them also, because it gives me a set of backup ears that also heard the same information,
Right.
who can go home and repeat it to that person on a regular basis because they care about them, and they also heard what's bad about their disease or what could be harmful about their disease, because at the end of the day, who are we without our community? And that's really what is the primary motivator in moving people towards being healthy.
Yeah, I think it's so important that we listen to one another when it comes to health, because I think that's what's happening. There's all the social medias out there. They write a lot of garbage out there, but they don't talk about the important things, which is health. I like to see more social media stuff giving advice on a regular basis to remind you, don't forget about the carbs, don't forget about the fats. Watch out with the dessert. It should be more of a reminder on a regular basis. If you want to live longer, listen to the doctor. Listen to what's right and what's wrong. Too many of us are taking too many things for granted.
Yeah, but I also think we should take what's on the internet and what's on social media with a grain of salt, because there's a lot of people who are not in medicine who make it very easy for people to believe what's not true.
Right, that's true. That's true, and that's where a lot of us are misled, believing a lot of this stuff that's out there. Like you said, they're taking advice from individuals that don't know squat about medicine, and they're trying to tell you, oh, we eat this kind of vegetable, or back in the days, there was no medicine. This is what they used to do, all these herbs and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they think all these herbs and all these kind of different crazy medicine that they go buy at these stores in town everything is like illegal, but legal to buy. But the people follow these steps. And I mean, I had individuals suffering from cancer, suffering from diabetes. Oh, take this, take that, because back in my home country, this is what we did, and everybody lived very well with all these different herbs and whatnot.
Yeah, that's what I want to make sure that everybody knows. It's okay to listen to the people who have that kind of advice for you, but at the end of the day, before you take that advice, is to please consult with your doctor to make sure that is safe and appropriate for you. That's what doctors are trained to do, is look stuff up to make sure that it's safe, and if it's not safe, or if they have any doubt about whether or not it would be safe for you or for your particular condition, they can caution you not to take that step towards using an alternative treatment, because there are a lot of dangers to all of those alternative medicines, herbs and stuff like you mentioned, that we don't commonly know because we don't commonly use them, and they're not necessarily written in the textbook, but your primary doctor or your specialty doctor or whoever it is that you take that information to would be the one to look it up and let you know if they think that it's a safe idea for you to pursue that.
Because some individuals as well, they think that all these herbs and whatnot, along with the medication that the doctor may prescribe to them, they think it's going to help both of them combine together. It could do more damage than good, right?
Yeah, it's the job of the physician to answer those kinds of questions and do the deep digging in the background to make sure that that's the safe decision for you at the end of the day. Because the worst thing would be is if somebody was under your care and an adverse event or something bad happened to them and you missed a bit of the information that they already knew about themselves. So, yeah, certainly talk to your doctor before you take anything that hasn't already been prescribed.
Now, there's individuals out there that I know personally that would rather take herbs and whatnot, all this over-the-counter stuff at the solar store, than to take the actual medication prescribed by a doctor. They don't want to go get the physical they should be getting because they think that they're going by what the way it was back in the days of the old timers. They want to go by that. They believe that more than they believe what's happening today with the modern technology and what's going on with the medicine with doctors. Why is that the people are just so hard-headed? Why is that?
I don't know that there's really an answer to that. I think it truly is a personality thing, but that's primarily the reason why I chose the field that I chose is in the interest of practicing preventive medicine because we see so much the downstream consequences of when things go wrong and we have to be the doctors on the front lines fixing all of that. And so my primary objective in training in medicine was to be the person to be able to say, let's do all of these things on the front end so those bad things don't happen to you. And so I don't really have an answer to your question with regards to why people believe what they believe or why they're hard-headed. But I think once people know that prevention is key, then they know the importance of taking the right steps in order to keep themselves healthy.
So there's some beliefs out there with people with different religions. They believe in different things. Some of them say that this is what the Bible says, or this is, and they, they don't believe in scientists. They don't believe a lot of these things that's going on, and that's what really gets me a little bit. That's why I brought you on the show today, because I want a professional like yourself with the knowledge that you have to share all that information for these hard-headed out there that are not listening. You guys better listen to this Dr. Prasad, who's an expert in her field, and she's really somebody that I respect. I went to her the other day, and she would give me so much great information. I said, I have to put you on my show because people need to be more aware of how to take care of their bodies when it comes to eating properly, and you're checking your sugar, and you can also see your doctor on a regular basis to see what's wrong with you. Then he can refer you to certain doctors. But when I got to see Dr. Prasad in her clinic the other day, she gave me some good pointers. Good, that's why I want to stay around a little bit longer. I know I still got a little spark of the old flash, but that flash can go away overnight if you're not careful. So tell us, if somebody wants to reach you for information as far as getting checked up and know more about diabetes, where can they reach you?
I work with Palm Medical Group, the premier leading diabetes, endocrinology, and metabolism group in the area. We serve
in Las Vegas?
We serve the entire catchment area of Las Vegas, and there's people from northern Arizona and southern Utah who can't get access to endocrinology care, and they come out to us as well. So we have a group of 10 providers, a large research center, along with our clinical practice as well. We have high volume, and we love what we do. All of us do. And
what is the website?
It's Palm Medical Group. I think you can just Google it, and it's the first one that'll come up. Palm Medical Group in Las Vegas, Nevada.
P-A-M.
P-A-L-M, like the tree, palm tree.
P-A-L-M.
Mm-hmm.
P-A-L-M, okay? You got that, and that's so important because, having doctors giving you information that's so much needed these days is something that we have to really take real serious and pay more attention to, because if you want to live a longer life and you live to enjoy your grandchildren, or enjoy yourself, and enjoy each other, these are the things that are so important. That's why I brought Dr. Prasad on the show. She's an expert in her field, and I think that having people like her around giving her advice on a regular basis, I want to bring her on again in a couple of months to talk more about this topic, because diabetes is a killer disease. It will take you down before you know it if you're not careful. So I think Dr. Prasad will put you on the right track, making sure that we stay healthy and get that 1-2 punch. What else do you want to say before we close the show up?
Thank you for your time. I think this is a topic that's really important for us to make sure the general population knows in layman's terms. I find that a lot of times what people tell me when they come to my office is that they don't understand it when other doctors tell them the importance of how much they need to take care of their own health. And I think when you break it down and you tell people in the language that they understand, it buys their interest a little bit more to take care of themselves.
So yeah, watch the carbs, watch those sweets, and watch those fats. And exercise a little bit and keep your guards up at all times. We'll catch you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Dr. Prasad, for being our guest.
Thank you so much for having me.